الله أكبر الله أكبر.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسولنا وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum. What we're going to be talking about in this set of reminders is the relationship between one's Islam and their manners. Basically, how does Islam impact our lives? How does it actualize itself in our daily activities? Do we just say that Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, and that's it? Or does it impact the way that we live our lives? And when we look at the 5 pillars of Islam, prayer, fasting, zakat, hajj, and belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is manifested in those 4, we see that prayer, for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ تَنْهَى عَنِ الْفَحْشَاءِ وَالْمُنكَرِ.
أتل ما أوحي إليك من الكتاب وأقم الصلاة إن الصلاة تنهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر.
So there's an impact between this worship and our character or our manners. In zakat, we see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us that zakat purifies our wealth and our self. And also with fasting or with Sawm, especially in this month of Ramadan, we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us that fasting is in order so that we can achieve taqwa. We can achieve God consciousness. In all of these actions, there's a relationship between this worship and our manners. And this is very important because when people meet us, when we deal with society, the way that we act is the way that people understand Islam. So actually our manners are the vision of Islam, are the picture of Islam that people receive from us. So it should have a big impact on our lives and also on the lives of others around us. And when we handle ourselves in a good way, when we treat people in a good way, when we act according to the teachings of Islam, we can impact society in a profound way. There was a story, subhanAllah, just a couple days ago that I went to breakfast with my father-in-law. And we sat in the restaurant and we got served and he went to the restroom and we came back. And he said, you know, subhanAllah, how much people's manners impacts our lives. Just when we came to this restaurant and they treated us well and they took our order and they were very good in their service, it's made me happy for the rest of the day. My brother-in-law came home and he had a similar story, that the way that people dealt with him in the grocery store when he went to buy something, it made his whole day. So the way that we act, the way that we carry ourselves, how Islam impacts our lives is very important in carrying this message of Islam to our society. Imam Malik radiallahu anhu, when his mother sent him to first seek knowledge, she sent him to his first sheikh and she told him, learn from his manners before you learn from his knowledge. And Imam Malik, he took that lesson seriously because later on in life, one of his students, he said, I spent 20 years with Imam Malik. In those 20 years, I spent 1 year learning fiqh and I spent the other 19 years learning from his manners. And I wish that I had spent all 20 years learning from his manners. Subhanallah, how he must have been in terms of how he carries himself and deals with people. Abdullah ibn Mubarak, one of the early scholars of Islam, someone said to him, we are in more need of learning adab or manners than we are of learning hadith. And Abdullah ibn Mubarak was a hadith scholar. So it's very interesting that the person is telling him we need to learn adab or manners more than we need to learn hadith.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا ترفعوا أصواتكم فوق صوت النبي ولا تجهروا له بالقول كجهر بعضكم لبعض أن تحبط أعمالكم وأنتم لا تشعرون.
Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, after that, anytime he would talk to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would be whispering to him. So much so that the Prophet would have to ask him to repeat himself. But Umar, he was so stringent in applying this verse and having the proper manners with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that he would be whispering anytime he spoke to him. And some of the early scholars and righteous people, they said, to have a lot of manners and a few deeds is better than having a lot of deeds with no manners. Because if we do a lot of deeds with no manners, actually we might be even causing more harm than we are bringing benefit. Whereas if everything we do, we have manners that beautify these actions, then it will inshallah have a bigger impact on people's lives. And the reason why we're talking about this here in Ramadan in this 5-part series is to show us all inshallah the link between manners and spirituality. Because actually there's a very strong link. We may not realize it at first. But what it does when we learn about manners, how we should carry ourselves when we visit people, how we should deal with our elders, how we should deal with our parents, how we should speak, how we should enter the home, how we should leave the home, all these subtleties of Islamic manners that were taught to us by the Prophet ﷺ and his companions, what they do when we learn them is they teach us how to always be in remembrance of Allah. So if we learn to live our lives according to the manners of Islam and the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ and the early generation, then inshaAllah we will be able to live our lives in a constant remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I ask Allah to help us to live always in His remembrance, to help us to fast and remember Him in this month. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept from us our deeds and our fasting. Jazakumullah khair. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.